At the end of this video, you will be able to create a data architecture with Flutter. But what is a data architecture? How does it work? And why do you need to learn this? Okay, so let me show you first in the application what we will build at the end of this video. So you can see that we have a random activity generator, okay, called spontaneous. If I click on new activity, you will see that I have a new activity. Learn to write with your non-dominant hand. And every time I click, I get a new activity. But what happens if I remove the internet connection, okay? Because this is coming from an API. Now, if I click on new activity, nothing happened. And it's normal because we don't have any internet connection. But if I restart the application, you will see that we still have the old yard cell. We still have the last activity generated from the API. So what happened here behind the scene is this architecture. You start the application and then you have a connection status, okay? If you are connected to internet, then you will get the data from the API, okay? And then you will save this data into the phone, okay? You will save it inside the internal database of the phone. And after this, you will display the data and you will be able to get new data, okay? And if you are not connected, then it will get the data from the internal database, okay? We will use SharedPreference for that. And after this, we will display the value inside the phone again, and we will get the data once again if we need a new activity. Okay, so you can see that everything works inside the application. If we start the application without any data, you still have the last data get from the API. If we restart the internet connection and I press done and I press generate a new activity, if I click on this, you will see that I have a new activity. And when I restart the application, obviously this one will be a new activity because we still have an internet connection. So we still have a new activity. But if I remove it, you will see we have done this. So if I remove the internet connection and now I restart the application, you will see that we have learned how to ice skate. Okay, let's build this together. So what I want to show you, what I want to tell you first is you can have access to everything, all this code and this architecture.jpg image, and it will be available in the description of this video if you want this. Otherwise, for the rest of this video, I will show you step by step. We will create a brand new Flutter application and I will show you step by step how to recreate this with the data architecture. This is one of the simplest data architecture possible. And we will use DIO for this, for the API, and we will use SharedPreference for the internal database. Let's do this together. One last thing I want to show you before we start is you can see that we can press log data. So if I press on log data, you will see that the internal database right now is this, okay? This is a map, and the external database is nothing for now. This means it's probably because we have started the application and we don't have any internet connection. But if I reset the internet connection and now I get a new activity, for example, do something you used to do, and I click on log data, you will see that the internal and the external database is now the same, okay? It's do something you used to do as a kid. It's the same one because the internal database has been override with the new external database. And this is the data architecture we will create today. All right, so I will put this on the side. And what we will do is we'll start from a brand new Flutter project. I will close this application. I will put this on the side and I should be able to bring a brand new Flutter project in a couple of seconds, like this. All right. So we have our Flutter project, our brand new Flutter project. Right there, we have the boardapi.com. This is the API we will use, and you will see it's absolutely free. The board API is free. You just go on this website, and you will see this is how to use it. You just have to call the http://boardapi.com API activity, and this will give you a map of a random activity. You see if I click submit, this gives us a brand new map every time, and it's absolutely free. So I will put this thing right there, and I will start the application. So I will click on this first. I will uncut the exception because I work on Visual Studio Code. And then what I will do is I will go inside the Explorer, the main, and we will start to remove all the bad code. Okay, so go inside the main, and I will delete all of this. Maybe we will need to start the application first. I will wait for the application to launch, and then I will delete the code. So it is still launching. Perfect, that's great. Okay, we can delete the comments also. Okay, so we have the application. Now what we need is to generate the main file first. So I will delete everything from line 22, and we will just keep this. So first we run the application, we delete this, my app, and we build this. The first thing we'll need is to know if the application is connected or not to internet. So for this, we'll need to use the Connectivity Plus package. And while we need to add some package inside the Pubspec.yaml, we will add all of them, okay? One of them is the Connectivity Plus, then we have the SharedPreference, and then we have the DIO package. So I would say Connectivity Plus, like this. Then we need the Shared Preferences. Then we need the DIO package. This is all you will need for this project. You can click on Get Package or Flutter Pub Get. Perfect. So this is loading. Let's find out if it works. You can see that we have some problem. Maybe I have made a mistake. Connectivity shared. That seems good. What I will do is I will just put the current version instead, like this. And if you want to search which version you have, you will need to go online, you search Connectivity Plus, Flutter, and you should be able to find the latest version. Okay, so I will cancel this and I will relaunch the Pubspec.yaml. Apparently we have some sort of problem, and now it worked. Perfect. So these are the version I will use. If you don't want to have any bugs, you can use the same version. Otherwise, if it's too old, then use the latest version. Okay, so now we'll go inside the main, and I will need to set up the connectivity thing. So what we will do is we'll start with converting the stateless widget for a stateful widget. Okay, so I will say right click, refactor, stateful widget. Next, what we'll need to do is create the init state. And inside the init state, we will subscribe to the connectivity package, which means we'll know if we are connected or not. And as soon as we don't have any connection, the subscription will tell the code. Okay, so what we do is we say we will need to create a late stream subscription, and we can create this right there, late stream subscription. And this one will be called a subscription, like this. And it will be a connectivity result, the type. So it will be connectivity result, okay? If you want to know where I get this information, it's on Pubspec.yaml, okay? So maybe we can try to find it. So it is connectivity Flutter, like this, right there, connectivity plus, and then you have the README. Inside the README, you should see this is what I'm doing. Subscription to the connectivity on connectivity changed, okay? So now at least you know what I'm doing. All right, so we have the subscription, and now what we need to do is inside the init state, we need to subscribe to this subscription. So I will say subscription is now equal to the connectivity package dot on connectivity changed, and then we'll say dot listen. And what we will listen is to the connectivity result. So we'll say connectivity result, which will be called a result. Perfect. I will put this on the side like this and remove it because we don't have that much place. Okay, so we have the result. With the result, what we will do is we will set this thing to the entire application. So for this, we'll use a ValueNotifier. So I will say if the result is currently none. So connectivity result.none. So if there is no result, which means there is no internet connection, then we'll say no internet connection. Internet connection. Otherwise, else, we will tell the entire application that we have an internet connection. Like this. Else, we have an internet connection. And for this, we will need to create some notifiers. The notifiers will be inside the application. So maybe the first thing we can do is create the structure of all our folders. I will right click and I will say new folder. This one will be called the data folder. Then we will have another folder called the functions. Then we will have another folder. And this one will be called the models. And after this, we'll need the pages. So I will say new folder, pages, like this. Okay, inside the data, we will need to have the notifiers. So I will create another file called the notifiers, like this. And inside this one, inside notifier, we can create a new file called notifiers.dart. Great. You can see that inside data, the files are nested. I don't really like that. So what I will do is I will generate two other files inside the data. Inside the data, you will say new file and you will call this one the dio.dart. And you will also, inside data, you will create also the SharedPref.dart. This is how we will get the data from the cell phone and from the API, okay? So inside the notifier, this is what we need. Inside the notifier, we will create the data notifier. So you will say ValueNotifier. This is our state management, okay? You can use provider, you can use RiverPod, you can use GetX or anything you prefer. But for this video, I won't use any state management. I will use the one used by Flutter. So already integrate inside Flutter, which is the ValueNotifier. So I will say ValueNotifier of a data model. And we will need to create this data model. So I will say class model, data model, like this. And we have it. Class data model, perfect. After this, we will need to name this one. So I will say data notifier. I like to always call it notifier when I use some notifiers. And this one will be equal to value notifier. And inside you will put the data model. Okay, so what is this? This is you have access to a data model, which is a class of information. And you can use the data notifier to always have the updated version of this data. I will show you later how to use this. We'll use the ValueNotifier listener. And this is a way to have the state management inside your app and have access to all the data from one place. It's very cool. After this, we need to create the data model. So for this, we'll go inside the model and I will say a new file and I will call this the data model.dart. Great. We can go back inside notifier and cut the class that we created and put it inside the data model. Okay, now we can import the class from the notifier and we can say import the model. Great. We'll go back inside the data model and now we need to create this entire model based on the API. You can see this is the API we'll receive. It's a map of string and dynamic, which means it can be a string or it can be a number or it can be a double. So this is what we'll do. We will generate all of this inside our data model. So we will create first the constructor. I will go inside my data model and we will create the constructor. So data model. And we will put this as named argument. So every time you want to create a data model, you will be required to put stuff inside. So you will be required to put the this.activity because we have the activity, type, participant, price, link, key, accessibility. And we will do all of them, okay? So first I will put this, and also I think I will put the final first, so final string activity, like this, okay? And we will do the same thing for all variable that can go inside the data model. So I will copy this for 6 other times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and we will name them. So you can see the first one is type, then we have participants, then we have price, link, key accessibility. I will just put them like this as fast as possible. After this, you will need to do the required for all of them also. So you will see required this.type, required this.participant, and required this.price, required this.link, required this.key, and required this.accessibility. Perfect. So we have our constructor, and now what we need is some function inside this data model. So we will need to do two things. First, we'll need to reset the data, because when we call the API a new time, when we click on get a new activity, we want to reset the data with the new information, and we want to see we want also to log the data. So if you remember, we have the little log button at the end of the app, and we can log the data to see inside the terminal. So we'll need these two functions. What I will do is I will create them right now. The reset will be a future void. So we'll say reset, because we will wait for the data to arrive. And for this, you will need to put the async, okay? And you will say await set data notifier, okay? We will need to create this function later. So I will set this as a to-do, like this, okay? Set the data notifier setter, like this. Okay, now we can just uncomment this, comment this out, so we don't have any error, but we will need to work on this later. After this, we will create another function called the log data. And this one will just log the data inside the terminal, okay? But we will need to do this also later, to do set the data log. Perfect. Let's go back inside the notifier because we have a problem. And now we need to fill this because all of them are required. All the arguments inside are required. So I will rename this data model with the L, and it will automatically suggest me what I need to put inside. So we have the activity, the type, participant, and this will be some sort of default value, okay? And for this, we will just put anything. You will see inside where we are, inside the notifiers, I will just copy this like that. So this is what we will have. We will have the activity, the type, the participant, price, link, all of them probably, all of them will be a string, but only the participant will be an int, okay? Because I want to show you some different type of variables. So for this, we'll need to go inside participants. I will go inside the data model, and the participants, I will replace this as an int. Okay, great. Now we can go inside the main.dart, and we have one problem. This one is the home page. So we will need to create a home page. I will go inside the pages, and I will say new file, and we'll call this the homepage.dart. And then this one will have the import m for the material, and we'll say stateless widget. This one will be called the home page, and inside we'll put a simple scaffold for now. So the main, we can now quick fix and import the pages. Perfect. So now if we restart, you will see that apparently we have a... Okay, perfect, it worked. Now what we'll do is we will remove the debug banner. Okay, so for this we need to go inside the main, and inside the material app, you should be able to remove the banner by saying the debug show check mode banner to false. Because right now I am running in debug mode and it looked just a little bit better. Another thing I want to do is to remove this gray bar because I want the code to be, the application to be as clean as possible. So what we will do is we'll say system Chrome, and then I will say dot set system UI overlay. So set system UI overlay style, and inside I will put a system UI overlay style, and inside this one I will say that the status bar color is equal to colors.transparent. Now I can put all my commas like this, and you can see the code. You can see that the status bar is now transparent. That's great. That's what we want. Another thing we want to do is inside the team data, we want to put the application as material through as true. Okay, so I will say use material 3. I will set this as true. And for now, it changed nothing, but later when we'll build the widget, it will be a little bit different. The UI will be better. Okay, the color blue will change this for teal, the color primary swatch, and that's about it. Okay, what else do we need to do? First, we will need to add some image. So what I will do is I will just drag and drop a file with some image, like this. Here we go. And I will say add folder to workspace or copy folder. So I will say copy folder. And now you can see that I have 3 things. One, I have the architecture.jpg. This is accessible inside the description of this video if you want. And it's very simple. If it's connected, then we go inside the external data with the API. Then we save the internal data. And then we show the data on the phone. Then we get the data again if we click on the button and forever. Okay, next I have the globe.png. This image is available on icons8.com. Okay, if you want to check it out. Otherwise, you have also the Wi-Fi icon. You can download them on icons8.com. I will put the link in the description of this video if I remember, hopefully. Okay, so this is the image I have added inside the project. Now, because we add image, we need to go inside the Pubspec.yaml and we need to add this image. So I will go inside the assets, I will delete twice, and I will go before the hashtag, delete twice, remove this, and just keep the image folder. Because this is what I have, the image folder. And now this should work, but we seem to have a little problem. So image, okay, that's good. Now I will click on pubget, and we should be able to have access to the image. And let's test this right now. I will say the body image.asset, and inside I will say image slash globe.png and save. And we don't seem to have access to globe.png, and this can happen sometimes. So I will restart the app just to see if it's, now it worked. Perfect, that's good. Okay, so we have this. The next thing we need is to start getting data from the API. So we will create this. We will go inside the data, and inside the data, we have one file called the dio.dart. And this is what we'll work on right now. We will get the data from the API, and then we will be able to use this data inside our application. So for this, we will go and create and import the dio package. So we'll say dio and dio.dart. This is the dio package that we have inside the SharedPreference, the Pubspec.yaml, if you remember. We added this at the start, and I will show you just in case. So you have it right there, the dio package. Okay, now we will go back inside dio, and we will say final dio is equal to dio. So we will start the package. We have a variable final, which is the dio. And now we can create a function, a future function. So we'll say future, and this will return a map of string dynamic. So string and dynamic. And then we will say get HTTP like this. This is the name of the function. And because it's a future, we need to put the async and await. And what we can do is we can say final response. And the response will be dynamic because the response will be actually this thing, which is a map of string and dynamic. Okay, string and dynamic because it can be an int, it can be a string, it can be a double. And what we'll do is we'll say the response will be only dynamic because Flutter will not be able to determine, to know if it's a map of string dynamic or anything else. So we just need to put a dynamic inside. We will then change this. So we'll say response is equal to await, and then we say dio.get. Okay, dio is available because we created the final before. So dio.get, and what we'll get is the URL. You can go on boardapi.com, it's absolutely free, and you can copy this. Okay, I will copy this and I will paste it right there. Then what you need to do is to put also the end, so activity. Like this, so make sure that you have all of this. Like that, here we go, and this is what you should see on your screen. Okay, you can see that I have a problem with the get HTTP, and let's go over. This is because we need to return something, and we will return the dynamic response. So we have a response, but now we will return a map. And to return a map, we will say return the data inside. Because if I put my semicolon and I check the data, you will see that this is also dynamic, but because we say we will return a map of string dynamic, then it will be a map of string dynamic when we will receive the information coming from the get HTTP. But where do we use the get HTTP? For this, we'll use it inside the manage data. And this one will be inside the functions. So inside the function, I will create a new file called the manage data.dart, like this, okay? And we will create a function. So we'll say future, and this one will be also a map string dynamic, because it will return a map of string dynamic after this function. And the function is called the get external data. And this will have the async because we have the future. Okay, we need to wait for the data. And let me just go in. Yeah, okay, inside there we have put the await. This was just to be sure. And after this we have the function get external data. But what do we put inside? First, we will say, I will copy paste the map. We will say that we have a map which is equal to the await of get HTTP. Because if you remember, I will need to put another one like this. Okay, if you remember, when we go inside get HTTP, this will return us a map of string dynamic. That's why I say the map string dynamic map is equal to await get HTTP. Now we have a problem, and this is because we need to return something. And the return we'll do is some data. So we'll define these data. We will say is it map? No, we will return a map instead, okay? So what we need to do is we need to set the internal data, okay? Because right now we get the data from internet, but we need to set the internal data. Otherwise, we don't have any internal data, and when we start the application, it will only work if we have an internet connection. So we need to set this. For this, what we'll do is we will convert the map that we receive as a string, okay? Because the baseline that I like to work on is a string JSON. If I bring the architecture, you will see that I like to put everything as a JSON string, and then I work with this data. As soon as we have the JSON string, we can convert into a map, and then we can convert into a model, okay? But when we get the API, this gives us a map automatically. So we need to convert it inside a string, then we can save the string inside the local data, and then we can use the map to convert it inside a model, okay? I know it's a little bit complex, but this is what we'll do. We will save the external data as the internal data. So we will say string, JSON string is equal to from map to string, and inside we will put what we need, okay? And the from map to string, this will be a function that we'll create inside the function folder, okay? And it will be right there. I will say a new file, and I will say utils.dart. This will be the utilities, which mean, by example, from map to string, okay? So this is what we'll create inside the utils. I will say string from map to string, and this will require inside, you will need to put something. And what you will need to put is, we will say from map to model, we will need to say required map the string and dynamic. We will require this information called data, okay? Or we can call this a map. Oops, sorry, I'm confused a little bit. From map to string, we will receive the map, okay? And as soon as we receive the map, we need to convert it into a string. Okay, good. So we'll say string value is equal to a JSON.encode, And to have access to encode, we will need to have the Dart convert. So let's do this after. We will encode the map. And now we will have a JSON string, which means we can return the value. Or we can call this the JSON string like this. Okay, for JSON, we'll need to say quick fix and import the Dart convert. Now this works fine. Another thing we'll need is from string. So we have from map to string, but we'll need the other way around. We will need from string to map. So what we'll do is we'll code it just before. We will say this will return a map of string and dynamic. And we'll call this the from string to map, like this. And this will also require a string, because we are going from a string into a map. This will require a string called value. And what we will do with this string is we will set a map of string dynamic, which we'll call a map. And this will be equal to JSON.decode this time, because we will decode the string into a map. And what you will need to put is the value, which is the JSON string. Okay, and after this, you can return the map. So we have created two utilities. One is going from a string into a map, and the other one is going from a map into a string. We can now go inside the manage data, and we can use this from map to string. So we'll say from map to string, and inside we need to put the map, which we have coming from the get HTTP. That's great. Another thing we will need to do is, so we are inside the manage data, and inside manage data, we will need also to say, to save the data, the JSON string, inside the internal data. Okay, if I bring back the architecture, you will see that right now we have access to the data. Okay, we have converted it into a JSON string, and now we need to save the internal data. So next time, if we start the application without any internet connection, then we can actually see something. Okay, so what we will do is we will say await save new internal data, like this. And we will need to create this function. So I will say future, and this will return absolutely nothing. It will just save the internal data. So we'll say save new internal data. And this will require a string. And the string will be external data string, for example. We can call it like this. And now, because we use a future, we need to put the async. And what this function will do is it will save the data into the phone. So we will say SharedPreference. Okay, we don't have access to it right now, so we'll just SharedPreference save, SharedPref save data from JSON string. And this will be a to-do. Let's do this later. So for now, we can just use this function. It doesn't matter. And we'll need to put the argument inside. And the argument will be the JSON string that we just converted. You see that we have converted the JSON string from the map to string. And now we have access to it. And we will save the data coming from a string, a JSON string. Okay, so that's good. Now let's go back. We have the get external data. We needed this information from the DIO package, I think. Manage, get HTTP, get the external data. Okay, everything is fine for now. Another thing we will need inside the manage data is to get the internal data. So we can already create this function. So we'll say this will return a map of string dynamic also. Okay, and we'll call this one the get internal data. Great. This will async because this will need the async because we have the future. And what we'll put inside is we'll say await the SharedPreference.getData. Okay, this is something we'll need to create also when we'll create the SharedPreference, which is this folder. Okay, this file SharedPreference.dart. We will need to create this later, so I will also say this is to do. Great. And after this, once we have access to this data, we will return a map of string, which will be for now, something empty, okay? So I will also say to do set the map under, okay? Because we will need to change this value from the information coming from the get data. Okay, all right, so now we can get the external data. We will save the data. For now, it will save nothing, but at least it will get the data, and it will return a map of string and dynamic when we use the function get external data. But where are we going to use the get external data? This is inside the manage notifier, and we will need to create this file. So we'll say inside the notifiers, we will say a new file, and we'll say manage the notifiers.dart. Notifiers.dart. Okay, inside this manage notifier, we will create a function called the set data notifier. Okay, and this set data notifier will use the function get external data that we created inside the manage data, this one. And it will also use the get external data. So I will go inside the manage notifier, and what I will do is I will create the future function, which will return absolutely nothing. So it will be a future void, and we'll call this one the set data notifier. And this function will set this notifier, which is the data notifier, and it's a value notifier with all the data model inside. So it will set this data model coming from the API. So I will say manage notifier, and I will say this one is async because we have the future. Inside, we need to say if the connection notifier, so do we have the is connection notifier? I don't think we have it yet. If we go inside our notifiers, we do not have this one. So we need to create another notifier by saying ValueNotifier. This one will be a Boolean, true or false. And it will say is connected notifier. And it will be equal to ValueNotifiers false when we start. So when we start, the default value will be the application is not connected to internet. And so we will need to change this is connected notifier inside the main. So I will go inside the main, and we will need to change this information if possible. Is connected. Okay, I will go inside the main. Where are you? Main. And now you can see that we have the if else condition. Okay, if the application is connected to an internet connection, which means it will not be this one, because this one is if the result is none, then this is no internet connection, and this is with internet. Okay, so if we have internet, then we will set this notifier. We'll say is connection notifier the value is now equal to true. Okay, if I go inside, you will see that this is the notifier we just created. It's the value false when we start. So as soon as we start the application, we init the state, and then we say that the is connected notifier.value is equal to true if we have an internet connection. Okay, otherwise we will say that the is connected notifier value is equal to false. We don't really have to set this as false because it's false by default, but we can just put it because we have an if-else condition. Okay, so now we have the is connected notifier. So we know if the application is connected or not to internet. We can go inside the manage notifier, and we can use this thing. We can say is connected notifier.value, and this will know if the application is currently connected or not. So when we will trigger the function set data notifier, we will be able to know if we have data, and if we have data, if we have a connection, then we can get the data from the API. Okay, so now we go inside the manage notifier, and you see if the connected notifier.value is true. So if we have an internet connection, then we will set the data as the external data. So we will create a map of string dynamic, string and dynamic. This one will be called the data map current value, or just current. Okay, and this will be when we start, the default value will be an empty map. And so if we have an internet connection, we will set the data map current is equal to the await get external data. And if you remember, we created this function earlier. So I will go inside this one, and you see that this is the function we created, get external data, which go inside the get HTTP and use the DIO package to get the information and return a map of string dynamic. So if I go inside the manage notifier, you see that this will return a map of string dynamic, and this will be our map data. Okay, with this information, what we can say is we can also say else. In the opposite case, then we can say the data map current. So if we don't have any connection, internet connection, we'll say get the internal data. And this one, if I click on it, you see that is also a future function that will return a map of string dynamic, but it's not set yet. Okay, it's available, but we need to work on this one later. Okay, so now we have our set data notifier that will validate if we have a connection internet connection, and then retrieve the external or internal value of this. All right. So next, what we can do is we can say if the data map current is not empty. Okay. So if we have some information, then we will say that the data notifier, which contain, if we go inside, which contain the data model, okay, this model, will set this new model. We'll say the data notifier.value is equal to the data map current, okay? But you will see that we have a problem because the data notifier is a data model and the data notifier.value is a data model. But the data map current is a map of string dynamic. So we need a way to convert from map to data model. So this is what we will do. We will create inside the utilities. I will go inside utils. And what we'll do is we'll create the from map to model. This one will return a data model, okay? And we'll call this one from map to data model. And this one will required, so I will say required, it will be a map of string dynamic because it will be a map, it will require a map. And then, can we call this one map? Yes. It will require a map. And after this, the function, this one will return a data model like this. I will just put my comma at the end, semicolon, format document. So now you can see better. Okay, but what is inside this? The map is the map coming from the external database, which is a map of string dynamic. So we can use this map. Oops, we can use this map, and then we can go and search inside this map for what we want. And if we want the activity section, so we'll use the key activity, this will return us the value. So host a movie marathon with some friends. Okay, so this is what we'll do. We will say activity like this, and this will return us this information. And we will need to do the same thing for all of them. Okay, so I will copy this map and I will paste it everywhere. But just keep in mind that you will need to replace the name. So if it's type that you search, you need to put the type. In this case, it will get the type, which will result to the socials. Okay, what we need to do in this case, what I like to create is a constant file. So I will go inside library, new file, and I will say constants.dart. Inside the constant, I will say const, it will be string. Const string, it will be k activity is equal to the activity. And this is the key from the actual API. So if I bring back the API, you see that this is the name of the key. And we will do the same thing for all keys, okay? So give me a second, if I can bring this back. Yeah, we will do this for all the keys. Like this. You see that we will need the K activities, we will need the K type, we will need also the K participants. And what I will do is I will just copy paste because I don't want to waste too much of your time. Okay, you see, this is what we'll need. And the reason is we don't want to write randomly the activity because we can make some errors. And if you make some errors, then your application is crashed. So I prefer to always create some constant. In this way, I'm sure that I don't have any errors with the keys inside the map. Okay, so we'll reuse them everywhere inside the application where we need them instead of rewriting them. So I will say manage notifier. And this one, oh, it's not inside manage notifier. We are inside manage data, maybe? No, it's not manage data. It's inside the manage. I forgot where we are inside the model data model, I think. Is it this one? What are we working on right now? Data map current. Yeah, we need to go inside the utils. Okay, this is where we work, inside the utils. What we need is to replace activity for K activity, like this. And now you see if I go inside K activity, it's the same thing. But we have access to the names of the keys from one place only. All right, so you get the point. Now I would need to say K type, and I will say the same thing for all of them. So I'll say K participants, K price, K link, K price, K link, and K key, and then the last one, K accessibility. Okay, perfect. So now we can convert a map of string dynamic into a data model. And this will return the data model, which means we can go inside the manage notifier and we can say from map to model. And inside we will just need to put the data map current. So I will cut this and put the map current, data map current. All right, so now we can set the data notifier coming from an external data. But if you remember, the internal data is still not working for now. So if I restart the application and I take a sneak peek, for now we have nothing. So we are able to work on the homepage in order to show the data coming from the API. Okay, so we'll go inside the homepage, pages, homepage, and now we will start to create this application. What we'll need first is a safe area because I don't want the image to be where we have the camera and stuff. So I will wrap for the body, I will wrap everything with a safe area. So refactor, wrap with a widget, safe area. Okay, perfect. This looks already better. After this, what we need to do is we will need to put a column. Okay, because everything will be inside a column. So I can wrap the image, refactor, and wrap with a column. Okay, after this, what we need to do is we will put a sized box just before we put some text. So I will say size the box, and inside we will need to put the height for 20, by example. Okay, and because I like to create constant, I will go back inside the constant file, and I will create a constant. This one will be a double, and I will call this one K double 20. And it will be equal to 20.0 like this. I will do the same for another constant, which is 10. Okay, so in this way, we can just reuse the K double 10 or K double 20 to have access to this information. So now instead of putting 20, I will say K double 20. And I will put this as a constant, and that's perfect. Another thing we need to put is a text. So I will say a simple text, and the text will be spontaneous, okay? Spontaneous, like this. Okay, what we'll need to do is also, we can change the style of the spontaneous. So I will say style, style, text style. Okay, and inside the text style, what we'll do is three things. The font weight will be font weight.w900. Okay, this is the biggest format possible. Then we have the font size. The font size will be 40. And then we have the letter spacing, because I think it looks pretty cool, like this. And we can save. You see, this is how it looks, spontaneous. Great. Another thing we need to do is put another sized box after the text. So we have some space between the name and the image. Next, what we need to do is we will put, I think, another sized box right under this one. So we have the image. Oh, we have that's good. What we need to do is we need to put some more widgets. So the first one will be the value listenable builder, okay? And this one will listen to the data. So we have data coming from the internet and from the local database. This data is stored inside the notifier, okay? Notifier.dart, we have the data notifier, which have inside the data model, okay? And this is our way to create some state management inside our application instead of using provider, Riverpod, or any other state management, okay? So what we'll do is we use the data notifier. I will go back inside the home page, and the value listenable is the data notifier. So in this way, we have access to all the data, and we don't need to put a stateful widget because the data will be reset automatically if we have new different data. The builder, I will remove this one, and I will use the context value child, format document again, put my semicolon, my comma, and inside the builder, we will return a simple padding for now because we don't want the text to touch the side of the screen. So we'll say edge insets.all, and this one inside will have the K1010. Okay. After this, I can format document, and we can put the child inside this padding. The child will be a simple column, okay? The reason is we will display multiple widgets inside just under the image, and multiple widget will be inside a column because we need all of them to have access to the value of the value listenable builder. We can change this one for the data, maybe. It will just make more sense. And inside the column, we can say children, we can remove the constant, format document, and save. Inside the list of column, we will put first the sized box with the height 20. So I will copy the last one like this. And then what I will put a text, okay? I will copy the other text previously like this. So we can just edit this one and save a little bit of time. So we can paste it. And now the text instead will be coming from the data. So we'll say data dot, and the data we will put is the name of the activity. So just activity. We can remove the constant like this. So now it works. After this, the text style will be, instead of W900, will be only bold. And the font size will be 25. We can remove the letter spacing, but we can add the text align for text align.center like this. And now we can format documents, save, and we have the activity. Okay, so why is it called activity? If we go inside the notifier, you will see that the default value of the data model is this one. We have activity, type, participant, and this is what we see on the screen right now. Okay, so if I go back inside the home, we can add other stuff. We will add another constant sized box, but this one will be height 10. Okay, and after this, we can add another text. So I will copy this one once again, and we'll paste it right under. What we'll say is we will put some sort of description. Okay, so we'll say this is a, and then we will put the $sign, open the bracket, and we'll say data.type, because this will give us the type. So this is a social type of activity. Great. So we have some sort of description inside the app also. So this is a type, and then you will say type activity. So this is a social type activity. You understand? And after this, we will need to put a last thing, which will be a list tile. And inside the list tile, we will be able to display how many participants will be inside these activities. So we can say text, and we can get the data.participants. Okay, and if you remember, this one is an int. So if I go over, you see that this is an int. So we need to say dot to string. Okay, so after this, we have the title. We will need also to have the leading. leading, where it is. So we'll put, okay, it's right there, leading, and the leading will be a text said calling participants. Let's format document, and you can see that it takes 0 participant, and this is the default value. Okay, so the application start to look like something at least. The next thing we need to do is to put the buttons, okay? Because we want the buttons to generate a new activity or to show the logs. So for this, we'll use the floating action button. You can go at the end of the file and right there after save area, you can put the floating action button location, and we will use the floating action button location dot center float, okay? This will change the location from there to the middle at the bottom. Then we'll say the floating action button will be equal to a column, because yes, you don't have to put the floating action button inside. You can put a column widget, and inside we'll use the elevated button dot icon. Okay, the onPress function for now will be nothing. We will set some to-do reminder, add the onPressed function like this, and the icon will be icons.add, and the label will be a simple text saying new activity, like this. I will put all my comma, format document, save, add the constant, and that's great. You can see that the new activity is on the top. The reason is the column take as much place as possible. So you will need to say the main axis size that minimum, which means it will take as less place as possible, which means it will go at the bottom. So we have our button new activity. Now we need a sized box. So I will just copy paste one size box we have on the top, and I will paste it right after the elevated button. After this, we need to put a text button. So we'll say text button, and this one will have an empty function for now. We will also need to do something about it. So I will put a to-do as a reminder. And if you wonder like how I put the colors for this, it's inside the extensions and it's the better comments, okay? I think you can have this for Android Studio also. You will have to find out. So, so for the child, we will just put a text saying, a text widget. And inside this text widget, we'll call this the log data. Like this, format document, and save. So this is what we have. We will also put another sized box at the end, and this one will be 20, format document, save, so it looks just a little bit better. We have our two buttons. After this, we need to actually trigger this button. The new activity, when we press on it, we want to trigger and get the data from the internet, because right now we have an internet connection, okay? So when we press on this, we want to actually get the data. So we will say await, and to have access to await, we need to put the async. So we'll say await data notifier dot value, okay? And the data notifier dot value is a data model. If you go inside the data model, you will see that we have two functions, the reset and the log data, okay? So I will go back inside the home page, and then we'll say dot reset. We will reset the value from the model, the data model, okay? This is what we'll do. So if you go inside reset, you will see that we need to set this information. We need to set the data notifier setter. We will do this right after. So for now, if we go back inside the home page, you see that this is good, and we need to do also the one for the log data. The log data will do the same logic. So you can copy paste and you can replace reset for log data. And you need to put the async before also, and that's great. The log data is not a future, so actually you can remove the async and you can remove the await, just like this, log data. Okay, now we will go inside the reset, because we need to reset the data when we press on the new activity, and we need to get the data from the outside world, which is with the API. So for the reset, what we'll do is we will remove what is inside. So this, we will remove this, and we will say await the set data notifier, okay? And if you remember, if we can go inside, this is something that we already created before. And the setDataNotifier will say if it's connected, then it will get the data from external. Otherwise, it will get the internal data. We have already created this file. So we'll say if we use the reset, then set the data notifier. And when we set the data notifier, this get the value, the new value from the external world. Okay, so reset the data will re-get the data from either the external world or inside the phone. If I bring back the architecture, every time you click on the button, the get new data, this will trigger the reset, which will trigger the set data notifier. And then it will either get the data from external or internal. Let me show you the architecture. If we have a connection, then it will show the data from the external or internal. Okay, after this, what we need to do is we could actually set the log data right now because we are inside the to-do. We are already inside this file, so let's do this right now. We will say string current is equal to from map to string. We have already created this function, okay? And the current will be a from map to string, and inside we will put the data map external. So we'll say data map current, this one. So if I go inside, you will see that this one is set every time you use the set data notifier. It will store the data map current, so it will store the map. So we can reuse this map, and we can set the map as a string by using the from map to string, and then we can print this information. We can say debug print, and we'll say current with 2 dots, and we can put the $sign and say current like this. So this will debug print. We have a problem, quick fix, import material. Perfect. Later, what we'll do is we will also log, I will put this as a to-do. We will also log the internal and external data, okay? Because we want to know what is the external and internal data at the current moment. So we will do this later. So now what happens if we restart the application? Do we have the information? Okay, we don't have the activity. What happens if we click log data? Let's go inside the debug console. And you see that we have multiple problems. So let's solve all of them. Maybe this one is one of them. Let's go inside the Pubspec.yaml and retry this. Okay, I will restart the application just to see the problems. So debug console. Okay, missing plugin, Flutter found, connectivity status, platform. Okay, I think the reason is I need to close the application and restart the application because, if I start this, because the reason is inside the Pubspec.yaml, we added the connectivity plus package. Okay, so we need to restart the application to use the connectivity plus package. So I will relaunch everything, and you can see that we have a little problems. iDroid version should be higher. So you just have to go inside the architecture, Android app build Gradle, and put the compile version to 33. So let's do this at the same time. If you work with Android, we will do this right now. Let's go inside the build, Android app build Gradle, and it's inside Android. This one, we can replace this version for 33. So if we restart the application now, that's good. We don't have the problem anymore. Okay, so what's next? What's next to do? Right now, you can see that when we restart the application, it doesn't work. We don't have the information coming from the API. So we need to solve and find out why this is the case. So I will close the Android. I will close everything, close all, so we can start fresh. The main will start, and it will set the isConnectedNotifier value to true or false. So that's good. After this, I think we need also to dispose this one. So I will say dispose method like this, and we will dispose the subscription. because if we subscribe, when we close the application, we want to dispose the subscription like this. And I think it is what we need to do. Subscription, it is cancel subscription instead. Okay, so let's restart the application. If we go down, you will see that we need to initialize the application with the activity. So if I press on this, it should work. Does it work? It doesn't work. Okay, so let's find out why. You see the int is not a subtype of string. Let's go inside the utilities and you can see that this one, the price, is an int. So we need to say map string. Let me just solve this thing inside the utility. We know that the price from the API, if I bring back the API, the price is not a string. So we need to convert this as a string because inside our model, we have everything as a string, only the participant is an int. Okay, so only the participant will stay an int and all the others, so the price and the accessibility, will have toString. So we'll say, if we go back inside the utils, we will say accessibility dot toString, and we need to do this for the price also dot toString. The only one we can keep is participant because it's an int. So I will restart the application, and now we will click on new activity. Let's find out what happened. It does work. So we get the activity coming from the API, and we have also the type and everything. If we want, we can log the data. So if we log the data, you see that the current value is currently this information coming from the API. So the activity is do something nice, and the all the stuff is inside, price 0 and stuff like this, participant 1, and we can see everything is great. Another thing I want to do is maybe change the size of this text. So we'll go inside the home page, and inside the home page, we will find the section. This is a data type activity. And what we will put is we'll put bold, and the font will be 18. Oops, 18, like this. The font, do we keep it bold? I don't think so. We will say colors instead, and we'll put the colors.black 87 like this and save. Now it looks way better. Okay, what do we need to do now? If we restart the application, you see that we don't get the value when we start. Because if I log the data, you will see that the current is an empty string, okay? So that's why we get the default value. So what we need to do is when we start the application, we need to get the data, okay? So we need to create a function. As soon as we start the main, we need to say initialize the application data or something like this. And we will do this just before we start the homepage. So we can cut this homepage and put a future builder instead. Inside the builder, you will put the context and the snapshot, and you will say if the snapshot dot has data, or if the snapshot dot connection state is equal to connection state dot waiting. So if the data is currently waiting to get to be received, then we will return a simple circular progress indicator. So we'll say a center widget with the child and circular progress indicator. The reason is if the application is currently loading and waiting to get the data from the API, then we want to display at least a circular progress indicator. Otherwise, we will just see like nothing. So it's better to do that. And we'll say else, in the case where we already have received the data and we don't wait anymore for the internet connection, then we will return the homepage. Okay, so now we can restart the application, and this should put the circular progress indicator on the application. And does it? It doesn't, because we don't have any future. We need to put the future, and this one would be, by example, the init application. Okay, and we need to create this file, this function. So we'll go inside the functions, and we will create a new file called the init.dart. Okay, inside this init.dart, we will create the future void because it will return nothing, and it will be init app. this will init the application. We need to put a async function, and inside we will do two things. First, we will init the shared preference, and then we will init the data notifier. The data notifier is our way to manage the data inside our app. If you remember, it's this one, the notifier, data notifier. So we need to init these two things. So we'll say await init shared prefs, like this. And these functions are not created yet. We will need to create them. So we'll say init data notifier, like this. Great. So let's create these functions. I will say this is a future void also. So we can copy paste, but we can call this one the init shared preference. And the other one, we can call it the init data notifier. Inside, what we'll do is for the data notifier, we can just say await set data notifier. This is a function we already created and is this one. So you remember when we get the external data or the internal data. If we go inside the architecture, this is this section. We get either the internal data or the external data. So let's go back inside this. We have already the init data notifier, which is good, but we will also need the init shared preference. So this will be to do, okay? Init the shared preference. Perfect. So we will need to do this. We can go back inside the main to put the init app because this worked now. So we'll go inside the main init app and we will import the init app. So you can see we have the import, which one it is, services, homepage. I think it is the import of the init.dart, where it is, init.dart, this one. Okay, so we have the import and now we have the future builder. So if we restart the application, we should be able to see the loading screen for, it's so fast that we don't see it. But if we go inside the init app and we create a simple, you don't have to create this, but if we create a simple future, the delayed, and we say duration, and the duration is like 5 seconds, you will see that if we restart the application, you will see that it will load for 5 seconds at least. So if we restart, it doesn't do it because we need to await maybe. If I restart the application, now does it work? Yes, you can see the loading screen, but it's a black screen. So what we'll do is inside the main, we will wrap the center with a scaffold. So we'll say scaffold body, and then we will paste the center. So you can see this is what we see for 5 seconds while it's getting the information when it's starting the application. So we can go back in the init and remove the delayed because we don't need this. We only need to init the shared preference and the data notifier. And if it's super fast, then it's perfect. Wait. What is this? Pause function. Do this. Let's go inside. Subscribe so we can go in subscribers. I guess you will have to subscribe. All right, so let's continue the video. So we'll go inside the shared preference and we will need to create all the logic. So first, what we can do is we can say shared preference. This one will need to be a class that we create ourselves. So we'll say shared preference is equal to shared pref. And let's create this one while we are at there. I will put this and we'll say class shared preference. And this one will have two things inside. We will have first the late shared preference. And this is coming from the import shared preference. And this one will be the instance. So we can say instance like this. And we will put this thing because we don't want to access the instance from somewhere else inside the file, just at this location. Then I will say also a late map, which will be a string and a dynamic. And then I will say this will be the data. So the data as a map coming from the shared preference which is inside the application. All right, now we need also a future that will return absolutely nothing, but the future will just initialize the shared preference. So we can say this will be an async because we have a future. And we need to say this will be a final string called the JSON string, okay? Oops, final string JSON string. And this will be equal to the instance, okay? Because we have the instance right there. And this will be equal to the instance dot get string. Okay, so we'll say, sorry, once again, I am confused. Instead, we will have the init. We need to initialize the application and then we need to get the data. So we'll say instance dot is equal to await shared preference dot get instance. Okay, so now when we init the shared preference, what happened is we have access to the instance, which is the shared preference dot get instance. And after this, we need to say await and we'll say get the data from the shared preference. For this, we'll create another function, and this one will be a future void also, which will be called the get data. And then we will need to put the async because it's a future. I will say final string JSON string. This is where we will put the JSON string. But first, we need to have the instance inside the init. So I will say JSON string. And after this, I will say this is equal to the instance dot get string. Get string. This is from the shared preference, okay? And the key of this one, we will need to create it first. So we can go inside the constant and we can create this key. I will create it at the top of the file. I will say const string key internal data is equal to key internal data. This is the key, so to be able to save the data inside the phone. So if you save it with this key and you retrieve the data with this key, then you have access to the data. So that's why we need to put it inside a constant so we can reuse it. So the key will be the key internal data like this. And I think it is about it. So what we need to do is, because this get string internal data can be null, then we need to give it a default value. Because if the get string is currently null and there is no data, when you start the application for the first time, obviously there will be no data inside the phone. So we need to put a default value. And this one will be called the save internal data. So save internal data. And this save internal data will actually return you a string, okay? And at the same time, it will save the first data inside the phone. So we'll create this file, this function. We'll call it future string. And then it will be called the save internal data. And this will be a string, JSON string. And the default value of this JSON string will be a JSON string empty, which we will need to create inside the constant. Right there, I will say constant string JSON string empty. And this will be equal to an empty list, an empty map inside a string, okay? So now we can go back inside shared preference and we can put the JSON string empty. So this will be the default value, okay? In the case that we want to save internal data like this, and we don't put anything inside the arguments, the default value will be equal to JSON string empty. But when we will save the data, in the internal data, coming from the external data, when we will save it, we'll use the same function, but this time we will put the argument JSON string. In this case, it will save the JSON string coming from the external data. So that's why we put the default value as JSON string empty, because we will use it only in this situation where we don't have any data when we start. And when we want to save data inside the phone, we can use, again, the instance. So what we will say is we will say first, we have a string, JSON string init, JSON string init value, which would be equal to the JSON string, this information, okay? So if we put something inside the argument, then it will be the thing we put inside the argument. Otherwise, by default, it will be the JSON string empty. All right. Now we can say we await, and we use the instance.set the string. We will set the string inside the phone. So we save the JSON string inside the phone. We use the same key, which is the key internal data. And that's why we create a constant, because we don't want to make mistake and don't write the same name of the key. That's why. The value in this case will be the JSON string init value, this thing. And we'll paste it right there, put the semicolon. And now because we use the future, we need to put async. And this will allow us to use the await. And after this, we can return the JSON string init value. All right. So when we call the save internal data, this will return the string, and the string is the thing that we have put inside. In this case, because we put nothing inside, it will be this default value, which this default value will be equal to the JSON string, which this will be equal to the string init value, which mean if the instance.getString with the key internal data is null, then the default value will be the JSON string empty. All right, so this will be set and we will have a default value. I know this was a lot of information. If you're not sure, you can reread the code and it will make sense. But what we need to do is also put the await like this. Otherwise, it won't work because this is a future. All right, so let's maybe format document. Can we see better if I put a comma like this? Now we can see better. Okay, so after this, inside the get data. So we get the data, we get the JSON string. And now what we need to do is we need to put it inside a map because we need to return something as a map inside the data. Okay, this information is a map of string dynamic. So I will say map of string dynamic, and this would be called map is equal to from string to map. Because right now we have access to a string JSON and we want to convert it inside a map. So I will put the JSON string inside. All right, so now we have access to a map coming from the get data. So we get the data, we get the JSON string, and the JSON string will either be the string set inside the database, otherwise it will be a map, a random map. All right, so we can use this and we can set the data inside the shared preference. We can set this as the map that we just created. Okay, so now we have the function get data, init, and everything. So this file is pretty much complete. I have one error and is this. Okay, so we created earlier the shared preference for one reason. And the reason I think is to be able to have something when we start the application. If I restart the app, you see that we have a default value. And we want to have the default value coming from the information, the database inside the phone. So this is what we'll do. We will go inside the manage notifier. We'll go inside the get internal data. We'll go inside. And you see that we have something to do. We have to work on this file, the manage data. So what we'll do is we'll remove this and we'll say await. And we will use the shared preference variable that we created. If I click inside this one, which use the shared preference, which is this class, we will use the shared preference dot, and we'll say get data. Okay, if we get the data, obviously first we need to init the shared preference. So where are we going to init the shared preference? If we go back inside the main, you see that inside the main we have a function called the init application. Let's go inside this one. And you see that we have the init shared preference that we had to do. And this one will be the await shared preference dot init, obviously. Great. So this is done. Now we can go back inside the manage notifier or the manage data. And inside the manage data, we can use the get data because we have init the shared preference first. Great. Now what we'll do is we will return a map of string dynamic. So I will create a string dynamic called data, or we can call this map, and we'll say this is equal to shared preference dot data. because when we go inside the SharedPreference.getData, this will go inside getData and actually set the data information, the map string dynamic. It will set it as a map. So that's why we get the data first, then it will set the data, and we can use this data, SharedPreference.data. Okay, what we will return instead of an empty map, we will return the map that we created. Okay, so that seems good. Now what we need to do is we need to save new internal data coming from the external data. Okay, so let's just restart the application first to see what happened. So if we restart the application, you can see that we have some internet connection, and now we have something as soon as we start the application. So you can see as soon as I start the app, do we have some internet connection? Yes, we do. So what happened in this case is we have the notifiers. The isConnectedNotifier is set as false when we start, which means we tell Flutter that we don't have any internet connection, and until this code will run, until this part, which is the subscription, then the code will know as Flutter don't have any internet connection, which means it will go inside the manage notifier and should go inside the get internal data. So if I put a breakpoint right there and I restart the app, it should go right there because the default value is false. So if I restart, is it false or get external data? Okay, get external data. What is the value? Is connected value is true. Let's go inside the main. Let's go inside the notifier, sorry. Okay, it's false. So what happened here is the default value is false, okay? And then what happened is inside the main, the default value, we have the subscription. The subscription will go inside the connectivity and validate if we have an internet connection. If we have an internet connection, then it will set the isConnected value to true. Otherwise, it will set it to false. So that's why it goes inside the get external data instead. Okay, and because we go inside the get external data first, then we go inside and you see that it get the HTTP and everything. So that's why we have some value when we start the application. But what happens if now we remove the internet connection? Let's remove this and say done. And I will restart the app. So what happened is we have something, we have the default value, and that's not really good. The reason is we never save the new internal data. So we need to save the new internal data in some way. And let's do this right now by removing the to-do, and we'll say SharedPreference.save internal data, because this is a function we already created. And inside you will put the JSON string, which is the external data. And we will need to receive this. So we already receive and require the external data, so we can paste it. So now let's restart the app, okay? And if we get some sort of activity, if I press on get a new activity, this should trigger the get external data. So that's what I will, oh, I don't think we have any Wi-Fi. Okay, we don't have any Wi-Fi. So I will put back the Wi-Fi and I will restart the application. Now, if I restart, you should see that we go inside the get external data. That's good. This will trigger the set new internal data. So I will play. Okay, it start this, and then it will save inside the shared preference. So inside the data of the phone, it will save this JSON string, which is this information. Activity, listen to music you haven't heard. So I will say play. And now this is the activity. If I remove the Wi-Fi completely and I restart the application, now because we have saved the new internal data, when we will start the application, it will go inside the get internal data. So I can put a breakpoint right there. It will go right there. And then it will set so I will press play. You will see that the map that we receive is the one that we have saved just before. So if I press play, you will see that it still works and we have the information. All right, So I think that is pretty much it. We have to work a little bit on get log data. Let's go inside the log data. Do we have something? I will search for the to-dos. Okay, to-dos. We have one right there, which is inside the log data. That's perfect. Then we have network information. That's not our files. So that's good. We only have to work on the log data and it will be pretty much done. Okay, so for the log data, what we want is to also log the data from the internal and the external. Okay, so for this, we'll need to go inside the data map current and we'll need to create two other maps. And this one will be internal and this one will be external. Okay, so what we'll do is we will set these things first. So we'll say, I will need to go, where are we? Inside the manage notifier. What I will do is I will say first, the data map external is equal to this. Then I will say the data map internal is also equal to the data map external. Okay? Because we want to always have access to the latest version of the data when we log the information. And then we will also say the data current is equal to external, like this. So external, data map external. Okay, so what happened here is when we get the data from the external, all the three map will be equal to this. Okay, because when we set the data as external, we also save the data in the internal. So that's why it's the same. After this, we will need to do pretty much the same logic for the other one. We'll say get the data map internal is equal to get internal data. And also the data map current is equal to the data map internal, like this. Okay, now that we have access to three different maps, which the current is the one we use in the application, the internal is the one inside the internal database, and the external is the one inside the external database. We can go back inside where it is, inside the log data, and what we can do is we can create two other strings. This one will be the internal, and this one will be the external. Okay. And then we need to put the data current internal and the data external. Okay, and we can log. This time we will not use the debug print, but the log, because we want the message to be orange instead of blue, so we can see it better. So we will say, I will copy this, and I will say internal, and the internal will be equal to internal. And we'll do the same thing for the external. External. And external. And now let's save and restart the application. Okay, so what happened if we bring the terminal? If I click on log data, you will see that right now we don't have any internet connection. Okay, so if I click on this, we should be able to see internal that have some data and the external don't have any data. But another thing that could be interesting is when we don't have any internet connection, we need a way to know that we don't have any internet connection, because right now nothing shows us on the screen that it's the case. So we'll go inside the home page, and what we'll do is we'll go where we have the image asset, image glob. So I will use the value listenable builder like this, and this one will use the is connected notifier. This is a notifier we already created before, and we know if we are connected to internet or not. So we'll go back. I will put all my commas so you can see better. Like this, the builder will be the context value and child, and inside we will return the image asset like this. So image asset, and then you can move the comma and like this. So what we'll do is we will replace the value for is connected to know if we have a connection or not. And we'll say if is connected, then I will display the globe image. Otherwise, in the case where we don't have any internet connection, I will put the other image, which is no Wi-Fi, this one. So I will say no Wi-Fi, like this. And now we can restart the application. So at least we have a visual clue that we don't have any Wi-Fi. So if I click on log data, we should expect that the internal data have this and the external data have nothing. And it's the case. But if now I reactivate the internal data, the internet, now you should see that we have at least something. We see that the application is responding with the internet connection. And now we still have, if I log the data, we still have the same thing. The internal data still have the same value and the external data still have nothing. The reason is I didn't press the new activity button. But now let's press the button and you can see that if I click on log data, now both of them have the same value. Okay, that's good. And what we can do is maybe we can restart the application and now you should see that only the external data have value. If I press log data, you can see that both of them has the same value. And the reason is every time we get data from the internet, we also save the data in the database, which is why we have the same thing. And you can test any possible scenario. For example, if I remove Wi-Fi and I click new activity and I restart the app, now in this case, we should be able to have only the internal data. If I press the log data, and you can see that we have the external as empty and the internal as something. You also have the current data. This is the one displayed in the app. It's in blue because we debug print instead of log. So this is about it. Let's try to find out if we have any other to-dos. So we do not have any of them. And this is how to create a data architecture application with Flutter. All right. So what I will do is I will reactivate the internet connection so the application look better, and that's about it. So thank you very much for watching. Again, all the code and all the architecture.jpg image is available in the description. I will try to put all the information inside the description also, and that's about it. Make sure to check fluttermap.com if you want to learn more about Flutter. And I see you in the next one. Bye.